Hi, I'm John Stalker, and I'm a voice actor. You're listening to The Medley with Blake Crash Priddle, so don't go away.
Welcome to this week's edition of The Medley. I'm Blake Crash Priddle, and this week our guest is Canadian actor, voice actor, and voice director John Stalker. He is a very inspiring person that encourages everyone that is pursuing a career in voice acting to not give up. He certainly didn't give up, and he has a full resume of credits, some of which include Franklin and Friends, Sailor Moon, and Care Bears. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired. Start by telling us about your journey towards becoming a voice actor.
It all started the way most people who have an inclination towards performing was not voice acting wasn't even a thing. It certainly is nothing I recognized. I wanted to be an actor. I announced that to my folks when I think they tell me I was 4. When I said, hey, Mommy and Daddy, I'm going to be an actor. And I get, oh, sure you are, son. They were supportive. And as I sort of, I was in a little whatever it was, and I think in kindergarten or grade 2 or something, was the first thing I ever did on stage. And I said I loved it. And so what I said when I was 4 was starting to carry through, albeit in a, sort of slowly. I remember it was a little Mexican Christmas thing, and we were breaking a piñata. Honest to God, I remember it like it was, it was not yesterday. I said, how about Juanita? That was my big line. After that, it was just something I was drawn to. I was not terribly interested in school, other than the fact that I could be in school shows. And those started when I was in, grade 7. I would have been, 12 or 13. And I was in, I don't know if they still even have junior highs now, but they had a junior high, which was 7, 8, 9. And there were school shows every year, and I was in them. It was good. I didn't really have to audition. There were not a lot of people who either wanted to do it or, I guess I had an innate ability too. And I did school shows and said, this is going to be for me. By the time I was, 18 and then 19, I failed my last year of high school twice. At that time, I was a grade 13, which is now first year university. But I failed it twice because I was involved in the school show. And I thought, okay, I've already made the commitment. I know definitely now I'm a young adult. I know the direction I'm headed. So that was it. Never took another day of schooling in my life again. And haven't looked back. So that was a really long story.
Before we talk about your voiceover roles, you did a few live action pieces as well. Can you tell us about that?
TV was the start. Of course, the CBC was just about the only avenue to take if you wanted to do television. But I did some things, I don't even know if I'm credited on, I don't put it on my resume, but there were some dramas and various things, and they were reenactments, and CBC was almost always used a studio, a dressed studio. Now they would go on location. We didn't do a lot of that. There was a big rehearsal studio downtown Toronto, and they would just go to the various rehearsal rooms and decorate those as active sets. So I did a lot of those. And then and again, this is before voice work, I had a friend in school whose dad was in the old Wayne and Schuster shows. He was a regular. His name was Paul Kligman. And through his son and and his son's at that point girlfriend and later fiance and later wife, he mentioned that, hey, we've got a friend who wants to do acting and he's doing a little of this. And Paul said, well, I'll put in a good word for you with Johnny and Frank, that being Wayne and Schuster. And he did, and I got a call. And I went in, and it was really doing virtually nothing. I was like, if they had a little, part of a baseball team, I'd be one of the baseball players. No lines, no nothing, just some reactions, of course. And then I started to get the odd little line, and I would get 2 lines or 3 lines. And they realized that I wasn't just I was never another pretty face, but I had just another face. And I started to get a little work with Wayne and Schuster. And in the last last couple of years of their productions, the director, Trevor Evans, and I got along very, very well. And he was casting for CBC, of course, a show called Coming Up Rosie. And I auditioned. It was all improv. It was 20 minutes straight of improv. He would toss us. He had a big, huge table full of props, random props, and he would just toss one to us in front of him. We were up on a small stage, and he'd say, just go. So you would have to improvise with that prop. So it was instantaneous, and it was a little scary, but I made him laugh. And a week or so later, I got the call that I had been selected as part of the cast. Oh, you know what? I've missed a step, too. I have actually missed a step. Because between the Wayne Schusters, the same director, I did a show called Dr. Zonk and the Zunkins. But I played, you didn't see my face. I was inside some little machine. I think if you Google Dr. Zonk and the Zunkins, you'll get a small idea. Anyway, Trevor hired me for that. And I sat inside this little box and did a funny voice. And there were 2. There was Zoe and Duncan, or Zooey and Duncan, and the guy in the other little box was John Candy. So that was his start as well. So Johnny and I worked together in that, and then we went on to Coming Up Rosie. So you'll remember the saga of the props. And I was selected. Johnny was selected. Dan Aykroyd, Gilda Radner. It was like an amazing cast. So many of whom went on to much bigger things not too long after that. Catherine O'Hara was in it. Our guests were Marty Short, Dave Thomas. It was quite a star-studded cast. And it was doing Coming Up Rosie while I was doing that I started to get into voice work.
So you've had the opportunity to work with some amazing and very talented Canadian artists, and I did notice that a lot of famous Canadian actors and voice actors also worked on Care Bears, which you were a part of. Can you tell everyone the character that you voiced? I know who he is, but...
He's the original Beastly. Yes, it is. And a great... I don't know, do you want to hear the story attached to... how I landed that role?
Oh, absolutely, definitely.
Okay. Well, that was for Nelvana, who is really recognized as almost as promoting and then managing the resurgence of animation in Canada. Of course, the old Norman McLaren at the National Film Board was a pioneer, but there hadn't been a great deal in Canada between the McLaren years and when the 3 principals, Michael Hirsch, Clive Smith, and Patrick Loubert, formed Nelvana. And they did, I think, a couple of movies first, Rock and Rule, and the name of the other one or 2 has slipped my mind. But then they started to put together a series called Care Bears, and they were introducing a new character right off the top. And in those days, there were not a lot of voice performers in Toronto, and the whole attitude was very, very different. Yeah, in the early years, in a broad sense, I didn't audition for a great deal. I just went in, they would just say, come on in, John, and you're going to be doing this. This was kind of like that as well, although this was very early on in the process of my career process. I was called in and shown a a picture of what Beastly looks like. He looked just like he does in the animation. And I worked with the voice director, Rob Kirkpatrick was his name. Great guy. He's still around, still working. He said, what do you got for this? And I said, yeah, we were going to work on this together. He said, yeah. Well, he said, I want your input, and I want you to, let's just find something for this guy. And we sat there, and I did all kinds of stuff. And I was like, I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. What do you think? Well, we were making sort of general progress in terms of perhaps attitude and, sort of the emotional framework of the character, but the exact voice we hadn't nailed down. And then I hearkened back to a TV show that I used to watch somewhat religiously. And I know it wasn't a religious show. I watched it religiously, though, and my folks used to watch it, too. It's an old-time comedian named Jackie Gleason. Very funny guy, very talented, old-time humor. He also turned out to be a magnificent dramatic actor and starred in a movie called The Hustler, which is about Minnesota Fats, the pool player. Anyway, Jackie Gleason used to come out and do his opening monologue, as so many of these shows did. And then he would do this little dance off to the side, and he would go, and away we go. And that voice came to me, and I thought, I've always liked that. I'm going to try it. And I did. I pinched it a little harder. I pitched it a little bit higher and came up with that. And made him, and of course with the attitude of him always being a whiner and a complainer and a scared little brat, really, that was the voice of Beastly. And Rob and I looked at each other. It was like, that's it. Okay, let's go. And that, as the rest, as they say, is history.
Did you have a favorite episode of Care Bears with Beastly in it?
I honestly, I get asked, I do a fair number of cons and seminars, and I get asked that all the time, and I'm afraid I can't. I don't really remember individual episodes. If I watched, and I have on occasion, just, to satisfy my ego, I'll Google a Care Bears thing and listen to myself work, just for fun, and I recognize some lines that I've said, right? But I don't recognize, I could never really identify an episode. Interestingly, the people that come up to me at the cons, to come up to my table, will say, and know the episodes. They know them off by heart. Okay, it was this, and Shrieky did that, and then No Heart said this, and you did that, and then da-da-da-da-da, and they know more about my character than I do, I swear. But, I mean, they'll do the same thing with most of the characters, for which there is a fan following. But no, I cannot pick one. Because the stories were, in fact, so many of the scenarios were the same. No Heart would get mad at me. Shrieky showed up somewhere into the series as his niece, No Heart's niece, and she picked on me and yelled at me. So he was the beleaguered little creature. So that is sort of the ongoing, ongoing result. But I cannot pinpoint, I'm afraid.
I think one of my favorite Beastly moments was when he was trying to make ginger cookies by following Gramsbear's instructions on TV. One of the incidents involved breaking an egg, which he used a dinosaur egg of all things. I don't know why. And when he finally finished, it was a horrible-looking gingerbread cookie. And he says, "Isn't he cute?" And
I remember saying, "Oh, isn't he cute?" I would have never known what episode it was from, though. Isn't that funny? Like I say, I can, "Oh, isn't he cute?" And it's like, wow. See? It's funny because every time I talk about him, so there's a new thing. And usually it's you guys that bring it to the fore. And so thanks for that.
I wanted to talk a bit about some of the other cast members that were a part of Care Bears, like Luba Goy and Terry Hawks. And there were a whole bunch of amazing Canadian artists that were a part of that. Did you get to record your lines with them, or were they done separately, or did you get to meet them afterwards?
Oh well, Luba and I did a lot of work together when she and her partners, Don Ferguson and Roger Abbott. Roger Abbott. Anyway, yeah, so Luba and I worked a lot together. And she's funny. She's still around, I think. I don't know if she's working. I probably haven't seen her or heard from her in decades. Strangely enough, about a week ago, I looked her up. I don't know why. I get into a jag of remembering, and then the thread goes in a weird direction, and I start looking people up. I rarely make contact with them, though, but I'm always curious. You know, I always wonder, after their major acting career is done, I have a thing, it's called dead or dinner theater, right? Because so many actors, when their TV career goes away, they do dinner theater. Or, you know, they die, like all of us will. But Luba's still around. Terry Hawks, the last time I talked with Terry was about 8 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that, because having been the voice director of Sailor Moon, the principal one, there were 3 directors altogether, but I had the longest tenure, and I was also the voice of Grandpa Hino in it. So I had the people from LA, from LAX, the biggest, I think it's the biggest North American fan expo, contacted me, and they wanted to see if I could gather the cast of the old Sailor Moon, because they had done, as many of your listeners and you may know, there's been a remake of Sailor Moon, a much higher tech, slicker version, basically using the same manga and the same scripts, but obviously changing them somewhat to adjust to modern standards and modern techniques and modern technology. But at that point, they said, can you get people together? So what I had to do was not only contact the ones who had finished the series, but I had to go back. Like Linda Ballantyne, it was the last Sailor Moon one, and I had been in touch with Tracy Moore, who was the original Sailor Moon. She and I have done a bunch of things together, and then I tried to get in touch with the middle Sailor Moon, the most popular one. Anyway, I contacted her, and she said, no, I don't do any more of the Sailor Moon touring. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm not interested. So when we went to LA, Linda Ballantyne went, and I think Tracy Moore went. I'm trying to remember everybody, but there were 2 or 3 tuxedo masks, blah, 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 blah. So go back to your original point. Tracy Moore was the original Shrieky. So she was the original Sailor Moon, and she was the original director of Sailor Moon. So, Tracy and I still keep in touch off and on. I did a seminar in Victoria, where she lives, a couple of years ago, but she's doing really, really well. Linda Ballantyne still does some work. I'm not sure how much, but, as we age, we get a little bit less work. But, I think she's still pretty active. One of my friends who played Nohart, Chris Wiggins. Chris died a couple of years ago. He was a wonderful, wonderful human being, such a really great guy. I loved working with Chris. Though I said Tracy and Tracy Moore, and I always forget her name. You just mentioned it, the Sailor Moon.
Terry Hawks?
Terry, thank you. God, it's strange I have a mental block on that. I can just hear it and forget it, and it happens all the time. Both those girls played Shrieky as well. So they were both Sailor Moon and they were both Shrieky, and it's interesting how similar their voices are. If you listen to the voice where Dan Hennessy, I don't know how Dan's doing. I tried to get in touch with him a few years ago. He was ill. Dan Hennessy was also in Coming Up Rosie. The show I talked about earlier. Dan had a wonderful career. He was a voice director in Nelvana. Did a ton of acting work. You know, if I had a list in front of me of the cast of Care Bears, I could probably run through them and you know, I could run through them and say, yeah, she's around, he's not, he's doing this, never, can't remember who the heck that is. As in every show, there are people who come and go, and are sort of never heard from again. That's the nature of the beast, too, in acting, in voice acting especially.
Or in this case, the nature of the beastly.
Very funny, very funny. I'll have to steal that one. Thanks.
Speaking of Mr. Beastly, besides him, you also did the voice of the Rat King in that Nutcracker special of Care Bears, and I believe you did 2 other voices in the Wonderland one too, right?
Yes, I was the Cheshire Cat. There was Tweedledum and Tweedledee. And I don't know which one I was, but I know the other one was Dan Hennessy. So there you go. I mean, so many. Again, the talent pool was small. We were all trusted to be able to do a good job, and all recognized for being really versatile. And so they would just call almost the same group of people in all the time. Again, many of them are gone. Len Carlson was brilliant, and we would just be, and later years, Neil Crone. Neil is a dear friend of mine. He was in Little Mosque on the Prairie, but he does a lot of animation now. He was a regular, called in for so many things. Greg Swanson, boy, oh boy, a fine talent. Had some issues with depression, unfortunately.
Back in the day when you approached agents, talent agents for voice or for commercials or acting, nowadays you send your application by email. Back then, did you send them by mail or did you go in person to the agent and give them your portfolio?
You would almost always go in. If it were Nelvana, say for an animation, you would go to the Nelvana studio, and you'd be in a waiting room with a bunch of people. I mean, it was good and bad. Socially, we interacted a lot more, and it was a little bit of an old boys club because, you know, I'd look around, and there were like, I'd be against 6 or 8 people of my going in for the same role I am, and the women, there'd be women in there, but it would be this kind of the same group, and we though we were competitive because it's a competitive industry, there was an underlying friendship and a kinship. We all knew we were working hard. It was a tough profession to make it go in, but if one of us got it, it was, hey, great, man, glad you got that. You know, it should have been me, of course, but I'm really glad you got it. And there was that lighthearted camaraderie, and you know, today it's very, very different. There's a lot of antagonism, a lot of resentment, and a lot of that has been exacerbated, I think, by the fact that you don't go in to audition anymore. You know, it's all email, it's impersonal. It's like, why do people text and not phone? Because you can get away with a lot more. You can't ghost on a phone call. But you can ghost in texting and in email. Email and texting eliminates emotion. You know, we're adding emojis now to supplement our emotional context. But in the old days, you actually had to say what you wanted to say. And it was very difficult to misunderstand people. Now you get something, you go, geez, why did he say that? And the guy who sent it to you, or the girl who sent it to you, may not have meant it. It's just the way we interpret it. But you know that if you're face-to-face and they say it, their tone of voice either backs up or flies in the face of what you think they're intending, right? And so I now everything is emailed. Very often, though, second auditions, if you get a call back, a lot of those will now be in person because they like what you're doing, and they like something about what you're doing, and they want to toy with, they want to manipulate, and they want to say, okay, we love that. Can you make them a little gruffer and a little bit angrier? But, you know, not too much anger. So, you know, you do it, and they go, okay, you're a little bit more, a little too far. Bring them back. Oh, that's nice. That's great. That's good. Good take. So And when I cast, that's what I like to do it. I mean, I prefer having the initial audition live and in person, but that can't really happen anymore. But that's why in the recalls, I can't insist, but I really always request that the second audition be live, because there are lots of times where I think you lose out on the best performer because it's difficult to explain it. You could type an email 3.5 pages long and still not get to the heart or the essence of what you want to say or what you want to instill or inspire in that character and in that delivery. So, it's good and it's bad. Hey, they can hear a lot more people if they have them all sent in. But you also got to know that what goes along with that is when they listen to your audition, if they don't like the first 4 words, they'll hit the next button. And when you're live, that doesn't happen. So you get to make amends. If you start out poorly and by the end you're really cooking in the audition, well, you've earned yourself the chance to get the role.
The one thing that I was always taught growing up is to always be a good sport when you lose. That means that if somebody else, in this case, gets the role, it's good to, shake that person's hand and say congratulations. Even if the voices in your head are saying otherwise, it's always good to not have that antagonistic attitude. Would you agree?
Well, I think that's a good life lesson, really. I mean, I'm a firm believer in what happens is meant to be. I mean, the universe is going to unfold whether we're happy about it or unhappy about it. And so why put yourself through the angst and the aggravation of getting all worked up about something? Revel in the joy that this other person, make something up. Well, he's got a wife and 2 kids and yada, yada, yada. He's going to make $40,000 on this series. That's going to really help. I mean, there's that. And there's also, you can't get every role. So you got to resign yourself to that, no matter whether you're up against 5 people or 105 or 500, right?
Of all the characters that you voiced in your career, which one was your favorite character to voice of all time?
Beastly. Because Beastly was kind of every man, He was just this guy, and again, like I just finished talking about, and we're all doing our best. That's all Beastly would do. He didn't, he just wanted to be loved. I think he would have loved to have been one of the Care Bears, but theirs was a non-paying job, and Noah Hart, probably gave him a few bucks, right? So I was like, I got a family to feed, I got a few little beastlets, and I got to, have money for food and rent. I'm sure that's the way he would have said it if he were a human being, right? He didn't even want to hurt Noah Hart. He didn't want to hurt Shrieky. He was just this wonderful, soft, innocent guy, or not even a guy, creature, who just wanted to live his life happily. I know that's probably extrapolating beyond reality, but that's the way I looked at him. He was this little nebbishy kind of creature who probably didn't know, which way to go in life. But he wanted to be happy, and he wanted, I think, the world to be happy. When he did stuff, it was only because No Heart made him do it. He was always bucking. Do I have to do that? Yes, you do, Beastly. Well, right, okay. Oh. And he would give that little thing. It's like, I got to do something bad. I don't really want to do that. So that's why I loved him. He had that personality. And today too, you're really fortunate if you can find a character that you can do, that you can honestly relate to. It's sort of Actors Studio New York, where you find something in the character to endear him to you, or to some way to express something inside yourself that it comes out, that manifests itself in the character. And that's good. And that's why, actors love to do roles that aren't them, because they can be something that is only a flicker inside them, but it can be the the huge fire on the outside when they're the actor doing that role, right? So we get to expand and expound upon all those little weird things in us and get paid for it and get a little bit of adulation along the way and get interviewed like I am today.
There was one episode where Mr. Beastly did try to become a Care Bear after being kicked out by No Heart, but unfortunately he didn't make it. He ended up failing. Do you remember that one?
I remember the scenario, but I don't remember the exact... no, I remember that happening, but I can't for the life of me remember the details of it. But yeah, see that? Well, so there you go. That exemplifies what I was just saying, you know. And he's really disappointed, you know. But it's again, you can't. He couldn't have everything.
What other characters did you enjoy voicing? I know another character that you did the voice of was Mr. Owl on Franklin and Friends.
Yes, I was the second Mr. Owl. He was fun. He was nice. He was, that very professorial delivery was fun to do. It was unique for me. It was different. And I love doing it because, I'd only done, I think, 1 or 2 Arthur episodes, and I always wanted to do Arthur. And Franklin came behind Arthur, and I thought Franklin was there was a little bit more maturity in the Franklin series. It was like, even if it was only a year or two older demographic, but I liked it because to me it had a little bit, and nothing Arthur is phenomenally successful. Probably also, if you took the number of years they've run, probably more successful than Franklin, but and it was one of those ones that I was really happy to get as well. I mean, I love getting all my gigs, but some of them I like getting more, and I really wanted that one. So, and he was a fun character, and he was a good guy, right? And in real life, when you're handed the task of, being instructional to children, that's a big undertaking. You're being saddled with a lot of responsibility. But if I may, I'm going to volunteer another character that I loved very, very much, and that was Newton Gimmick from Teddy Ruxpin. Because Newton was, he was just, I don't know, there was something very special about him that endeared me to him, right? He was kind of wacky and off-center, again, a good heart. I love playing characters with really good hearts, right? And he was pretty special. And it's interesting. I just concluded the first season. I hope it goes 2 and I'm in it, of an adult cartoon where I played a character that I really felt I liked. It was kind of me, a more mature me. And the show is called Red Ketchup. That's done by a Sphere Animation, and the character's name is Bilbil, Pelisle. I hope I get the French pronunciation right. I worked hard at it with them, and it's not in French. It's there is a French dub. There is the original was done in English, and Bill is just like every man. He's just, he's a bit of a scoundrel, and yet he's got a really good heart, and he's in love with one of the characters. He's in love with the lead performer, the lead character in the show, that character's sister, and but he doesn't know how to express love, and and I really enjoyed that. And it wasn't a voice. I didn't do a voice, just doing myself. So it was interesting to all these years of doing funny voices to find another character that was kind of there all the time. That I talk like this just a little bit more like that, but basically my own voice. So that's nice too. And I suspect if I examine my career, I've got a pretty long IMDb, as you know. I would find a few others and say, oh, yeah, that was more than just a voice and more than just this, that, or the other. But that one had some tangible meaning to me beyond the performance level of it.
You had directed Sailor Moon, which is an anime cartoon. For those of you that don't know, anime is a cartoon that comes from Japan. Have you ever done any anime dubbing? Because I hear that is a very complex thing to do. It can be mastered, but it's hard.
It is hard, and I learned it on the old school of dubbing. It's gone through. I'm not going to go into the thing. When I worked on dubbing Sailor Moon, right, that was a long, involved process. So, and that was the first major dubbing series in Canada. I think Astro Boy preceded it, and there may have been one other series that didn't. I mean, they were recognized, but they did not hit the popularity level that Sailor Moon did. Sailor Moon was tough to voice direct, and aside from the fact that we didn't do it as a top to tail episode, like animation is recorded differently, but and especially dubbing. But Beyblade, I was the voice director of the original Beyblade, and I was in it as well. I had a minor role, and I did a bunch of episodes, but I kind of directed myself, which is real easy. Hey, John, that was great. Hey, thanks. So his name was Mr. Tate, and it is difficult. Because you have to not only take the dialogue, which has been all rewritten. It's basically got the sense of what the Japanese dialogue said, but it has to be rewritten so that the lips match, all the lip flaps match, or as closely as possible. And sometimes the Japanese line was longer. Was more expressive. You had to get more words in. It's a difficult task writing it, and then it's up to the performer to make it fit. But not only that, but you've got to add the emotion that was done in the original, because the emotion is reflected in the visual. If someone's eyes are wide open and they're saying, "Oh, wow, that's great," right? But please understand, too, that because sometimes they couldn't fit the right English words into that space, they would actually rewrite the dialogue so that "oh, wow, that's great" doesn't have anything to do with "oh, wow, that's great," because they had to reset a little bit of the scene to accommodate the sense of the scene. I don't know if I'm making sense of it in my explanation, but suffice it to say that when you have to match lips and match emotion, it's a difficult task. Then again, when you're doing prelay or original voice animation, it's got its own difficulties, because if sorry, that line's too long. Well, it's not too long in the dubbing, because it's already established how long it is, right? But no, you got to redo it, and yes, you have to redo it, but you are sort of not. You have the freedom to say it the way you want to say it, but you are also creating the mood. You've got all of that. That's all predetermined for you in dubbing. So you don't even have to you don't have to think quite as much. You just have to duplicate what's the emotion that's there, or the attitude that's there. Prelay is different.
You had talked about how competitive the voiceover industry is, and the voice acting industry, especially now. Would you still encourage aspiring voice actors to continue pursuing their careers, no matter how hard it may be?
Well, I'd pursue anyone from doing, again, life lesson number 2 of the day. You got to do what you want to do. There's this life is not a dress rehearsal. You got one life, and for those who believe in an afterlife or reincarnation or whatever, blah blah blah, you're not coming back as who you are or what you are right now, and if you do, you may not even know that you were here before or not. You've got one life to live. Live it, and encompassing a couple of the things that are really important. Do what you love. Don't give up just because someone tells you it's tough. Don't give up because you get, your first a couple of times you get a rough go and a hard slap in the face because you're told, no, that's terrible, they did blah, 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 because you'll hear that. You got to try it. I mean, there's nothing worse than who wants to be on their deathbed and said, I always wanted to do this, I never tried. I don't want that, and I would encourage everybody to just at least try it. You want to be a voice actor? Try it. You can try it on your own. Again, the problem is it costs money too. You need a teacher to teach you how to work. You can't just pull it out of the air. But if you really want to be a doctor and save lives, well, you got to pay money and go to medical school. That's just part of the rigors of choosing and following a career. But if you know that it's competitive, and again, being a doctor, you'll always be able to find work after. But being a voice actor, there is an immense amount of competition. And when I do teach as well, and I encourage people to you've got to persevere. You've got to be competitive. And do your homework if you have to. Don't just walk away from the lesson and say, well, that's another lesson. I'll be back next week. You got to go home and work at it, because there's so much competition, and most of them are not going to work on it, that you're going to give yourself a huge advantage by going and practicing and spending the time. And realize too, if you don't want to spend the time on it now, you will not be later when it comes to crunch time. Go out and work hard. Follow your heart. Know that you got to make a living too. We all like to eat, and we all like shelter. And living in Canada, well, we need warmth in the winter, right? 4 walls. So you have to. Maybe you got to find a part-time job. I know I work with a lot of people who have a day job, right? The ideal thing, I always tell them, if you've got an audition, a recall, and you got to go back at 1:00 in the afternoon, you can't say, can I come at 5:30 when my day's over? No, you've got to go at 1:00 in the afternoon. You can't start playing around like that. So either work for yourself, and there are lots of things you can do, or I always say work for your uncle. You work for your uncle, hey, Uncle Bill, can I leave now and go to an audition, and I'll put in an extra hour tomorrow? No, that's okay. You go ahead. You can work till 4 o'clock today. Say hi to your mom for me, right? So that's the ideal situation. But we all, it's a tough one, because you have to somehow work together with making a living to provide us with the basic amenities and doing what you want to do. But really and truly, even if it's only part-time, go out and do what you want to do. Get those lessons, go to auditions, look up everything you can, get a good teacher. If it's voice work, put together a good demo. And then if you've got those two things, you've got the inclination and you got the talent, you go to an agent and say, hi, are you interested in repping me? And if you're in the right place at the right time with the right talent, an agent will take you on.
John, I really enjoyed having you as the guest this week, and thank you so very much for your time, and we all wish you the best of luck with your future endeavors.
Thank you so much, Blake. It was great letting me talk a lot.
And that was Canadian actor, voice actor, and voice director John Stalker. Don't forget, if you'd like to suggest guests for future editions of The Medley, don't hesitate to contact me. Just visit my website, blakecrashpriddle.com. Until next time, remember, here at The Medley, we're all kinds of different.